Well, hello everyone, welcome back to my channel and welcome to Bonsai, the first video you see. Today I finally update you on my maples, on that little experiment I started. In this video here that I will link, today we will look at the first results after the spring fertilization, differentiated between organic fertilizer and chemical fertilizer on two plants of identical genetics, placed in identical pots, identical exposure, different cultivation. One was fertilized with synthetic NPK fertilizer. In this case, it was Procare NPK 1266 from Bioges. The other was fertilized with an organic fertilizer. In this case, BioSlow Zen, also from Bioges. Here we are with the two plants that are the stars of this video. For those who don't remember or haven't seen the previous video, these are two maples obtained through Thalia that I purchased last year and completely bare-rooted this spring, and I placed them in two identical pots with identical substrate treated in the same way. I want to emphasize that both were then given probiotic bioactivators and microelements. The only thing that changed was the fertilization, which, regarding macronutrients such as nitrogen and potassium, from this image, I would say it's hard to tell if one plant has grown more, one has grown less, one is doing better, one is doing worse. So let's start feeling which one was fertilized with chemical fertilizer and which with organic fertilizer. Let's start with the one with chemical fertilizer. On the pots, I put a C for chemical, and over here, clearly, we have an O for organic. This way you can see them from their ideal front. Now, the repro challenge begins. Let's try to analyze what aspects differentiate these two plants. So we move to a slightly more neutral background to actually see, I have to be honest, in terms of vegetation, branch length, number of elongated branches, etc. I do not find these different. The health of the plant, if you want, I can show it to you up close, is quite comparable. There are no damaged leaves, there are no dry leaves, there is no evident sign of diseases on either side. So this is also something that I honestly find identical for these two fertilization regimes. The only thing that perhaps slightly changes is the level of maturation. Well, here we are. On the right, we always have the one fertilized with chemical fertilizer. On the left, the one fertilized with organic fertilizer. Here, if we really want to find a difference, in my opinion, this one is slightly darker, slightly tougher, compared to this one, which really, talking about splitting hairs, let's say, slightly softer, slightly less dark compared to this one. So what I would say is that perhaps synthetic fertilization allowed this plant to mature the leaves faster compared to purely organic fertilization. Another thing that caught my eye is the shape of the leaves. Here we are with the plant fertilized with organic fertilizer. You can see how they tend to curl. Here instead, we are with the plant fertilized with chemical fertilizer, and overall they tend to be a bit more stretched out. Here we also talk about different hypotheses, but since we have to compare two plants, I try to find the differences that I consider a bit more significant. We might also find this on the new shoots. Here we are still on the organic, and here we are on the chemical. Perhaps slightly more stretched leaves. You see, they go from intense red to green a bit more quickly, whereas here, even the pair of leaves that is immediately before still remains bright red. Now, it is clear that to make the most objective assessment possible, one should use tools. I could completely defoliate them, the weight of all the leaves, and see how much biomass has actually been produced by these two plants with these two fertilization regimes. However, let's say that the goal of the bonsai artist is not to produce biomass. The goal of the bonsai artist is to create a plant in the best way possible in the shortest time possible. So, judging between these two fertilization regimes, looking only at the results to date, I think it is very difficult to determine which is better and which is worse. So what I mean by this is that it doesn't matter whether you have a chemical fertilizer or an organic one at work. They are not both the same way. Well, that's not exactly what I want to tell you. And in fact, I want to show you a third plant, which is a sister to these two, because it is also a sycamore tree, which also comes from Thalia. But one thing has changed. Now, first, let me show you in this video. Here we are. New plant is the one on the right. I would say that the differences can be noticed on this plant, and quite a lot. You can see how it has many shoots that are really much longer compared to both this one and the other, and they are all beautifully spread out, all a rich green, and especially, they no longer show that little curling that the other two tended to have. Overall, the plant has beautiful colors, a fantastic state of vigor, and does not have any problems compared to the other two, but its vigor is greater than that of the other two plants. What has changed? The only thing you can see is the pot. So certainly the size of the pot affects the cultivation of a plant. But in this case, both plants were reported bare root, cutting a lot. So I don't believe that this plant here has filled this pot, which is very, very large. Just as I also don't believe that this plant has filled that pot over there. So in my opinion, it is not so much the pot that has played a role in this vigor, but the exposure. This is because this plant and the other twin that was considered for the test were kept in a rather shaded exposure, receiving light for a maximum of 2 hours a day, up to now. Slightly more because we are approaching summer, while this one received light for 4 to 5 hours a day. And so you might be wondering, how was this plant fertilized? Well, this plant here has been fertilized with my usual protocol, so with synthetic chemical fertilizers and everything else exactly the same as this one. So if we want to make a comparison, these two plants have been fertilized in exactly the same way. But it is clear, like the sun, this one has a much greater state of vigor compared to this one. So the issue with fertilizers is definitely a very controversial and debated topic, both among professionals, but especially in my opinion, among amateurs, and those who clearly profit from fertilizers. In my opinion, this example is very important, showing these two plants here that have been fertilized in the same way, but have been exposed to the sun in two different ways. This is because it's not just about the fertilizer. The fertilizer itself doesn't perform miracles. Fertilizer alone is simply a supplement that helps the plant stay healthy and give its best. The plant does not exclusively need NPK, it needs many other things. The primary needs of a plant are light, water, soil, air, and then clearly fertilizers come into play later. It is clear that if this soil is rich in nutrients, the plant will grow better. But if the previous factors are lacking, such as light and water, plant will never grow. A plant in the dark will die. A plant without water will die. A plant without fertilizers does not die. And this, in my opinion, is one of the fundamental things to understand. So it is clear that a plant like this one, which has received more light and is fertilized in the same way as this other plant, has been able to generate much more biomass, many more leaves, many more branches, and is also in a better state of health, I would say, because the leaf is much more beautiful, much greener, much more spread out compared to this one. So what did I want to tell you with this video? First of all, I wanted to show the results of the two different fertilization schemes, because I am sure that some of you were very curious about the topic. And I think it's nice to carry on this type of project to show that fertilizer is important, but not the only thing that bonsai or plants in general contain. It is clear that a good cultivation regime allows you to achieve results faster, both in terms of bonsai and plant health, and thus reach your goals more quickly. But do not fall into the trap of thinking that fertilizer is a miraculous solution to all your problems, because as you have seen, based on the exposure I gave to these plants, the result was extremely different. Well, but the experiment will clearly not end here. I will continue to carry on this project throughout the year, and maybe even in the coming years, if I continue to have all three plants. Stay tuned to the channel to see how these projects progress. I hope I have clarified a bit more on the topic with Simi, and as always, we will see each other in the next video. Please like, comment, and share. My Tris of Shiolio Maples, and then I say goodbye, and hope to see you soon, everyone.